I was inspired to found Build My SOP because I was a manager running these facilities for many years, and the Achilles heel I've seen in every business that I've entered has always been their standard operating procedures and their employee training. Build My SOP offers document management, learning management, and task management for our business owners and our managers. We're a really easy platform to be able to navigate and to be able to track and keep revisions of all of the changes that you've made within the years of your facility being open. And the plants don't stop growing and retail stores don't stop selling. And so it's very challenging to keep up with this when you're also having to get product out of the door at the end of the day. People should sign up with Build My SOP right now because regulations are in place right now. Regulations are going to be in place in the future, and things are going to be evolving and changing as long as this industry is here. We're really a vendor that people can trust. We're helping people with their bottom line, creating homogenized products, creating employee accountability, and just helping them with that peace of mind at the end of the day. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Regulator, powered by BuildMySOP.com. I am your host, founder, and CEO at BuildMySOP.com. And joining me tonight is former regulator Tom Mohan. How you doing, Tom?
Doing good, Katie. How about yourself?
I'm good, thanks. So a little bit about me and my background and why we're here to talk to you today. I have been working in the legal cannabis field since 2014, helping in operations and compliance. Actually, Tom and I used to work on the opposite sides of the fence together, and that's kind of how he came to be with us today as the VP of Regulatory Affairs at BuildMySOP, and we are thrilled to have him. And I will let Tom let you know a little bit about his background.
Sure, Katie. Well, thanks, and I'm happy to be here with you. So I started my public safety career about 30 years ago, working in EMS as an EMT paramedic, and of course, working my way up through that. And then I started out in law enforcement in 1998, working for a couple different agencies, working patrol, narcotics, different areas of that. Where in 2014, I started working with the Marijuana Enforcement Division in the state of Colorado as an investigator. Working my way up to being a supervisory investigator out of a field office in the state of Colorado.
Awesome. Tonight, we are talking all about safety and security of your cannabis business. And there's a lot to that. And one of the things that the regulatory departments are actually most interested is how you handle your safety and security. So first, we're going to discuss what needs to be in a premises diagram.
Yeah, let me jump right on that one. So the diagram itself kind of tells you everything about the business in the layout of it. So some of these businesses are located in strip malls. Some of them are located in multi-unit kind of areas. So the question is, what actually constitutes your business area and your licensed premise? So that's why the whole diagram itself, while it's got more areas or more units in it, we need to know what actually is your licensed premise and what do you actually control as the licensee.
And I know that's really important too. So like if your property actually has the pot on it, if that is part of your licensed premise, consumption on site, things like that can be a major problem.
Well, there's a couple things that look at that too. So if you have a 2-story licensed premise, do you control the stairway or is it used by other persons, within that unit? If that's the case, then you can't have a contiguous area within the licensed premise. And you're actually leaving your license with your product to go back into your license, which is a major violation. So that's why it's very important to understand what is in your licensed premise and what is in your diagram. The stairway, the common areas, the bathrooms even. Some jurisdictions require that you actually have a restroom for your employees and or for your customers. And is that on your licensed premise? And do you have control of it? That's what's very important to be in your diagram.
Yeah, I know that one of the units I teach yoga and share a bathroom with everybody. So be outside of our licensed premise.
Right. And it all depends on what your local jurisdiction says that you have to have or not have in your control or of your licensed premise. But so also within that license, I'm sorry, Katie, go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
No, so what I was going to say is within that licensed premise, there's certain different areas within it. And that's kind of our next topic jumping into it. It's like what needs to be on this license diagram or the license premise diagram. So you can own several different units in it and only have one of them licensed to sell marijuana or cannabis in that particular area, or have that particular area as the limited access area for your employees. That's why it's important to have each of these different areas outlined on your diagram as far as which one they are. Is it the licensed premise? Is it a restricted access area? Or is it a limited access area?
Let's talk a little bit about all three of those.
Which are huge differences. Yeah, so the licensed premises is the actual whole area that you are licensing. And that can include an area that is in the front area where anyone can be. That's, mom, dad, and child almost can be there, and it's not a violation of law. Well, I wouldn't have any minors in there. It's still not a violation of the rules. So after that point, you vet somebody who's over 21 or over 18 with a medical card in certain states and jurisdictions to go into the restricted access area. So the restricted access area is where marijuana is stored and kept for sale. It is displayed for sale. That is where the point of sale system is, where a cannabis connoisseur and their customers and patients can discuss the different products available and where the actual purchase is made. Then after that is what's called a limited access area. And the limited access area is where only employees and licensed personnel can be. And that licensed area is where you're going to have your safes, your money, your maybe you have stations where you're making pre-rolls or other type of packaging and labeling processes going on prior to the actual sales area. So each of those particular areas all make the licensed premise. So not only do you have the restricted access, the limited access, and then the non-limited or restricted access, but is part of the licensed premise, which would be the bathroom or other items like that.
And for a while, I was first getting into the industry in Colorado, because that's the terminology they use for the areas there. That always really confuses me, like the restricted and the limited. I feel like that should
be switched.
Switched.
I've heard that so many times. It's just that the best way to look at it is restricted is for restricting of patients or customers only. So patients, if it's a medical, 18 and above, of course, depending on the jurisdiction, and recreational, 21 and above, once again, depending on the jurisdiction. That's so you're restricting the access to just those patients or those customers that are allowed to be there. And then limited, only a limited number of people can be there, which would be the employee section. That's kind of the best way of remembering it. So if you're a limited number of people, that's going to be your employees, your badged personnel, or people that are in visitor status that are being escorted that can be in those areas.
Got it. That's a good memory tool there.
Yep. And then the licensed premise, the rest of it is what's controlled by the licensee. And that could be the hallway, that could be bathrooms, certain areas like that, where they're not licensed or restricted. Like you can have a bathroom that's off to the center up front that people can come and go and use without being vetted into the restricted access area of being over 21 or 18 and a patient. But it's still part of your licensed premise. So that really needs to be known on that license diagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And before we leave the topic of diagrams, there's a lot of other diagrams they use for security purposes. So camera diagrams, and they're, pretty specific about how they want those outlined. So now they want to know where the camera is, and they want to know the direction and what that camera covers. Right. And they want to know the number of that camera too. So in case they're looking at your DVR system, they're able to tell what's happening there.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into this a little bit more when we talk about a little bit more safety and security aspects of it. But when you start looking at the cameras and those numbers of the camera, what those are designed for is so somebody can look at that camera map and say, okay, this incident occurred in this area, and that's going to be camera number 7 at 12:32 p.m. And of course, with your standing operating procedure that you've got, these, your managers are going to be able to go, okay, camera 7, I go directly to my DVR, I pull it up, and I can get it to the official that's requesting it, or for internal purposes, or whatever the case might be.
Yep.
That's why those camera maps are very important. The other ones that we don't really talk about too much from the licensing aspect, but are very important also, are your emergency ingress and egress points. So if you have a fire, and this is more for cultivations or other bigger facilities, even some stores that have large areas, or even 2-story or 3-story kind of licensed premises, how do you get out of there in case of an emergency? A lot of places will actually like you to have those maps by the doors or close to exits so that they know, hey, these are where I need to go in case of a fire where there's a lot of smoke or, poor visibility. If you can see one of these maps, you can grab it off the wall and look at it and get out safely. So not just the premises diagram, not just limited access, but your fire escapes, your exits, your camera maps, your lighting maps for that matter. Where are your lights in your parking lots? Where are your lighting maps as far as safety and security goes? What about your employees who are leaving work and they need to know, where's the lights? Where do they need to park for it? So they have safety when they're walking out to their cars after a shift. Yep. Or for deliveries. We'll talk about that one a little bit too.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about internal safety and how we kind of prepare for that. I know that Colorado issues to employees and they go through a background check. And the employee is issued that badge and able to work until that badge is expired or revoked. And in New Mexico and a lot of other states too, they put that on the license owner. And so they're
Correct.
required to get the background check, which is a bummer because not only is it costly, but it also takes time. And when you're ready to hire an employee, you're usually ready to hire them like now and not, days or a week from now. So with that said, what kind of things are we looking for on a background check for those of us who are required to do that on our own? What are the red flags?
Yes. So both are the same thing. The state of Colorado and other states that do the background check to issue an occupational badge, they have a set of guidelines, which will vary a little bit between state and state, but are very similar. Of course, no felony convictions for a period of time, no drug felony convictions for a certain period of time. Once again, each state or local jurisdiction changes on that, but whoever's doing the background check is going to get very similar information, whether it's the state doing it or whether it's the local person doing it, as in New Mexico or other states like that. So what you're looking for is good moral character. Yes, that's a very broad term on what good moral character is, but what you're looking for is within a certain period of time is, theft of property or money or drugs or drug crimes or drug felonies. All these things would preclude you from being a licensed badge holder, whether it's in a state system background check or whether it's in a personal licensee background check. What they're looking for is good moral character. And I understand that that is a very broad term, but they're looking for people that can be trusted with a very, high commodity that is still federally illegal, but is legal in states. So the states are being watched and scrutinized. So they want to make sure that the employees that are working in this industry are being fair, honest, and above board. So that's what they're looking for in the background check. The drug felonies are definitely a no-go because that's kind of what they're working with now as far as the federal government side goes. So basically looking for a good, upstanding citizen, not that they're saying that they haven't had any criminal history or that they haven't had any drug problems in the past or DUIs for that matter, but they're looking for it within a period of time that's not, that shows a pattern of problems. So if you've had a DUI every 6 months for the past 10 years, you probably wouldn't be a good candidate as far as the background check would go. But if you had a DUI 10 years ago, once again, that's not going to preclude you from working in the cannabis industry.
Now, there's restrictions, right, with the felony stuff. But even if someone did have multiple DUIs and stuff, and it's not a felony charge, you're still allowed to hire them, right? It's just maybe.
Yes, you can. Yeah, yes. So there's certain crimes, and once again, I can attest to Colorado, but this is a kind of a national broadcast. Each jurisdiction has its own boundaries on that. So I don't want to get into the specifics of saying, hey, this will preclude you here and not there, because each jurisdiction has its own. Most of the time, from what I've seen throughout the United States, is misdemeanors are not the problem. It's felony convictions within a period of time.
Okay, good to know.
If that helps. And once again, it's vague, and I apologize for that, but it's a vague, good moral character is a vague statement.
Yeah, because morals, perception, right? Effective. Excuse me.
Correct.
So talking about what we can control as owner operators and safety, let's talk a little bit about how we can prepare our employees for a possible robbery or fire or power outage or CO2 leak. Let's touch on that a little bit.
So you kind of hit the big key thing there, as you said, prepare your employees for. That's the key thing is preparing them. You've got to have a plan for when this happens, because it's going to happen. So if you have a plan in place and you train your employees on it, things will go much smoother. Because if you don't have a plan, you just plan to fail, because everything will fail at that point because nobody knows what to do. So the first and foremost things before you look at a robbery, the best thing to do for a robbery is prevention. How do you prevent a robbery? Well, you don't make it an easy target. So when you have deliveries, you make sure your deliveries are in certain areas at certain times with certain securities, i.e. lighting, extra staff to be on a lookout. You just don't want to pull up and grab, your case of cannabis products and, walk 3 blocks into the store that you're delivering to. You're kind of asking for trouble for that. If you have a plan to where you call ahead, hey, 5 minutes out, I'm in a white van delivering, your product. Can you have somebody meet me outside? So somebody, the plan is that your employees go outside, they look at the area that you have deliveries for. Is it a secure area? Is it a fenced-in area? Now, not every place can have a fenced-in area for their deliveries, but that would be great if somebody could pull in, an employee closes the gate, and you're in a secured parking lot for that matter.
As someone who's delivered,
it doesn't happen.
Dozens of facilities, that's just not the case.
It's not, but that's what I'm saying is if you can plan these things out and look at it and say, hey, what can we do to make this a safer delivery? I've actually seen people pull up with the unmarked van right in front of the door at noon when you've got all these customers coming and going, and they're trying to bring product in, and they leave the product in the van with the doors open while they're delivering it.
Oh, no.
That is just asking for somebody to grab it. So that's why I'm saying you don't have to have the secured fenced in area, but as long as you have extra employees to say, okay, let's close the doors. Let's bring the one box in, come back, unlock the doors, bring it open. And that's what I mean by making a plan. How do you plan on doing your deliveries through this? Can you carry 1 box, 2 box? Do you put them on a dolly? Do you turn your back while you're loading the dolly? Or do you have 2 people there to watch the product? These are things that you have to have a plan before it happens. And a lot of robberies that I've seen in my law enforcement career of over 30 years is robberies are a crime of opportunity. They watch these things and see where are the weak points, where I see a delivery happen every Wednesday at noon and they turn their back, and this is my time to make my opportunity to make it happen. What's kind of funny is that we've all seen Groundhog Day, where, Bill Murray's character watches the guards and he's watching his watch. Yeah, it happens day in and day out, but a lot of times these deliveries happen the same way, same time, same day. And the robberies are planned around known or, perceived consistencies of how things are done. So those plans need to be made in advance, where they're made different times, different days, different ways, different vehicles. Those are all things that need to happen beforehand. So once again, prevention is the best thing and the best key. And if you can plan for a good prevention, hopefully you never have to deal with the actual robbery itself.
Well, and if
But
you are dealing with an actual robbery itself, just hand it over. Give them anything that they want,
yes,
anything they need. I do suggest you keep a limited amount of customers on the sales floor, so that way your bud tender or customer service rep refer to them in your facility can have one-on-one with whoever they're working with and not have to worry about what's happening in the background or anything like that. So having limited people that are actually on the sales floor interacting with the bud tender at the counter, if you have a separation of areas.
Yep. I agree with that. And just to add to that, like your one-on-one kind of thing, if you do have a robbery or somebody, is threatening violence to you, don't try to be the hero in it. Kind of take the step back and be a good witness, be a good person that can, get the details of what this person looks like. What are they wearing? Which way did they go? Those things are extremely important. And, I'm going to jump back into this side of things is having your SOPs and knowing how to operate your DVR so that, okay, as soon as they leave and they're gone and you call 911 and you call the police, well, let's get a description for it. You may not have seen it, or you may have seen the gun that was this big. And that's normal. That's fine. But if you can operate the DVR and you can get still photos for the law enforcement officers before they even get there and say, hey, they're wearing this, they're driving this, they're going this way. That information is so critical and important than it is than trying to stop the robbery when it's going on.
Right. There's no point in trying to stop the robbery.
Just don't.
Let it happen.
Cannabis isn't worth your life.
I can more of you, my employee.
Correct.
So let it go.
And you have a better chance. You have a better chance of solving it by being a good witness than you are a poor victim.
And when you're dealing with other things outside of robbery, let's say fire, CO2 leaks, something that makes it so everyone's to exit the building immediately. It's good to designate a meeting point for that. If you guys remember our fire drills at school, drill would go off, whole school would go out, teachers do their count. Teachers really need to act just like that. We need to designate that meeting point. It needs to be identified on the emergency exit route. And you need to, all people are out of the building immediately.
A couple things with that too is, once again, being a good witness to that. So, okay, not just because the CO2's alarm's going off, you hear that, make sure that the people that you're responsible for are getting to that position where they need to go. But when you have responding fire department getting there, if you can say, hey, this is what's going on. Is it a fire? Is it CO2? Is the fire in this area? All these things, can help save trapped employees that are in there, or making sure that you have those employees evacuated when they need to be. Just like you said, that rally point, is everybody there? If you have an employee that calls in sick and you're trying to count them and they're not there, these are things that need to be in your policy. How do we know who is there to be accounted for? Do you have checklists? Do you have a daily checklist of who is present there and who needs to be accounted for? And once again, that standard operating procedure, these are things that need to be trained and go over. So when a fire does happen, when the CO2 alarms do go off, it's not the time to try and look up that SOP right then and there. That's the time to act from the SOP that you've already read and reviewed several times.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say those SOPs are something that facilities should review quarterly, biannually, annually? Just the safety and, protocols and procedures.
So I believe that at least quarterly, everybody should go over emergency procedures, where to go, how to account for everybody, where to go with it. Not only quarterly on that, bare minimum quarterly as far as managers. How do you operate the DVR? Managers, is the DVR working? How long is going through the all the safety procedures? Are your fire extinguishers charged? Are they up and at them? Go through quarterly and look at your fire extinguishers and make sure that they're all charged and in the green. Are your batteries and your exit signs up and running? It takes only a few seconds to press the button and make sure it works. I say minimum quarterly. I would like to see it monthly, because you have new employees coming and going, and the manager, like, when was the last time that we did training? If you have it the first week of every month or the third week of every month or one set time frame, that is the best way of doing it. If you do it monthly, quarterly at the minimum, because I understand everybody's busy. And once again, I'm the regulator. So, I would like to see it done more often than owners or, people who are so busy that, oh, we've got to put another fire drill into our,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my owner wants, an extra harvest this week. And now all of a sudden I've got to do a fire drill. Well, the fire drills in these emergency procedures don't need to take hours. They just need to take hey, let's go over this real quick again. What happens if you hear this? What happens if you see this? Try to go over these. They should be at least a monthly thing as far as you do that, but bare minimum quarterly. Go over these procedures so that all your employees are safe, and it doesn't take just a few minutes to go back over them.
Review. It could be literally
Yep.
like a 2-minute thing. Hey guys, safety review. Let's just go over these talking points. And
yep. I've done procedures and operations where the first thing you do is you stop, you go over a safety procedure, which has been the same safety procedure every single time you do one of these, and it's a daily thing. But you know what? When something happened, everybody knew what to do, how to do it, and it actually saves lives.
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine as a manager, if something happened to one of my employees in an emergency situation like that, I don't know if I could live with it. It would be horrible.
And once again, it's something so simple as, let's just go over this procedure real quick. Hey, Katie, where is our closest emergency exit? Hey, if you're working in veg room 2, where would you go
How do you
to get a fire extinguisher?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How do you get out of, and some of these cultivations I've been in, they have been a maze of places. So honestly, if you want to do a drill where you shut all the lights off, if you can do this procedure and have them get out without any lights on, or even, minimum green lights, for, if you're in a dark room kind of thing like that. But some of these places, the lights go out, power goes out. What happens if the power goes out? How do your employees see? Do you have exit lights with the battery, with the exit lights on it? Is that something you want green? Is that even in fire code for your area? There's so many different questions that have to be answered, and different procedures that are jurisdictionally different. I can't give you an answer to all of them.
Yeah. No, it's hard too, because people are like, yeah, but what do you do for this instance? Like, it depends on where you're located.
Absolutely. Not just where you're located, but is it a cultivation? Is it are you doing an extraction with flammable solvents, and you have a fire alarm? Well, that's kind of different, because you want to shut down those flammable solvents, and that needs to be part of your response versus just a straight, fire. And instead of a straight fire alarm, I hit the exit and I'm gone. Because that could save a lot of lives just by you turning a few valves or hitting the emergency shutoff switch. So those are part of the procedures that need to be, and that's why I say monthly. The more you train to be successful. If you don't train to succeed, you've trained to fail. It's just that simple and that easy.
Well, because you don't know what you're doing if you don't train. So.
Yep. And I've been involved in a lot of law enforcement trainings throughout my years. In fact, I've been a trainer for, MED, for Marijuana Enforcement Division, and for other agencies I worked for. And some of these scenarios, we put some of our trainees into situations that they didn't train for, or didn't plan for. And you could see the looks on their faces, and all of a sudden it's what's called level black, where they don't know what to do because they didn't train specifically for this, or specifically for this
scenario
thing coming at them, not just the scenario, but this piece that's coming at them, whether it's a fire, whether it's overwhelming, an overwhelming kind of scenario that they haven't dealt with. That's why you need to train these scenarios. And that's why training with the darkness, turn the lights off. How do you get out of these rooms? What if the netting is in the way? How do we get out of this stuff? It's so much more reassuring to train when there's not a fire than when the fire actually happens. Because when the fire does happen and something happens that you've trained for, hey, I've been through this. I know exactly what this is. I've seen this before. Or I haven't seen this before, but I know what to do because I've dealt with something similar. And that's where the training.
You reviewed it and it's told over and over.
Yep.
So it can
And
kind
that's
of
why I say
monthly.
monthly.
You know, when you're in that emergency situation too, some stuff just disappears.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. But the more you train, the more it's an instinctive kind of response that you have. So instead of thinking about it, like, hey, what do I do here? It's like, I know exactly what to do. And your mind just takes over and says, I need to do this, that, the next thing, because I've trained this so many times and I've gone over the standard operating procedure several times with my colleagues, my bosses, my managers, my owners, that it's second nature and it just, boom, you've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of talked a little bit about entering and exiting a facility, product and cash. Is there anything else you want to add on to that? That was kind of our next subject point, but I know we addressed it a little early.
No, the product and cash, it's be aware of your surroundings. If something doesn't look right, it probably isn't right. If you see, it's the middle of summer and somebody's got a hoodie sweatshirt on, well, that might be something that you're like, wait, why is somebody so cold when it's 100 degrees outside? Or vice versa. Somebody doesn't have a lot of clothes on and it's cold outside. These are things that kind of make you stop and think about something. It might be somebody that under the influence of, drugs or alcohol that maybe want to cause you harm. So keep an eye out. Personal safety when delivering, your products and cash.
You're opening or closing a facility too.
Opening or closing before you even approach your doors. Is there, somebody that looks like they're a homeless person sitting in front of your door? Are they truly homeless, or are they trying to make it look like they're homeless? So as soon as you turn that key in the door, they've got you inside the licensed premise with all this product by yourself before it even opens. So these are things that you want to look at.
The opaque windows in these facilities too. So you could be held up at gunpoint for hours before anyone even recognizes something's not right in there.
Correct. And that's why I'm saying, look at your surroundings and be aware of your surroundings will help you more than anything else. If it doesn't look right, it probably isn't right. There's nothing wrong with stopping what you're doing, retreating a little bit, and calling 911. I know as a law enforcement officer going to the scene and saying, hey, okay, everything is fine. There was nobody actually there. I would rather that happen than having a victim of a violent crime occur.
Right.
Let's, even if we don't know that we thwart one, let's get out there. And if you see something suspicious, call 911, say something. Not only do you need to report these incidences, but if you actually do have a crime on your licensed premise, you do need to report that, not only to your local law enforcement, but to the state licensing authority, which Colorado is the Marijuana Enforcement Division, the Cannabis Authority, depending on which state it is. So all these things need to be reported also. And the reason why is if it happened at this particular licensed facility, they're probably targeting other licensed facilities. And what better way to solve crime than having a pattern that local law enforcement can actually, acknowledge, see, and find, and then stop the next, violent crime from happening.
So how would a manager go about reporting an incident to a regulatory department?
So each state has their own way of reporting it. Like the state of Colorado actually has a few different ways of doing it. There's actually a phone number you can call in to report it. There's an information referral report that you can actually send out. A lot of places too will have an investigator that they, work that particular area, and they can email or call that particular field office and say, hey, investigator so-and-so, I know you've been to my facility before. I've had this happen. So as long as you do any one of those, you're covered by the rule that says you have to report it, but make sure that it is reported, especially since it's a robbery or something of a timely manner. Make sure you also call the local authorities, whether it be a city PD or a county sheriff's office, wherever your licensed premises is located in.
And do you suggest that you let your neighbors know too? Maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Not just your cannabis neighbors, but also your other businesses, because it may not just be a cannabis business that they're targeting. It just may be a business of opportunity that they're targeting. So by all means, if you've got other businesses in the area, let them know what happened. So the video surveillance that you have is actually yours. You can share it with whoever you want to share it with. So if you have pictures of a suspect vehicle, if you have pictures of a suspicious person that's been loitering around in the area, by all means, take a copy of those and send them to your neighbors. In fact, don't let this be the first time that you meet your other businesses in the area. Go meet them beforehand and make a network and say, hey, if we have a problem, here's kind of like the group number that we all kind of use, or the group area, or a Facebook page. I know I'm showing my age by saying Facebook, but Twitter, or other things like that a lot of social media can be used to share these items. Because if you've got a crime happening at your licensed premise, it's not the only place that they're committing a crime.
Yeah, absolutely. Helping out. So really what I'm hearing is organization, awareness, and being proactive.
Training,
which that's to me being proactive.
That is proactive, but it's just not being proactive as far as being due diligence. You got to get out there and train. You got to make sure, not only do you have to have those standard operating procedures of what to do and how to do it, you need to practice them. They need to be read. They need to be reviewed. They need to be signed off on. You can't just have, the procedures in a book, on a dusty, bookcase in the manager's office. They need to be reviewed minimum quarterly, preferably monthly.
I actually like having our emergency procedures next to our emergency exit route. Like
I agree.
In the employee area where we have all of our required signage and stuff for the state and federal signage that they require. I have safety. I have our emergency there, which also includes the tip line and everything that my employees need to communicate with the state if there's a problem.
All the numbers you need.
So, well,
absolutely.
I think a pretty simple, subject matter that we had today with safety and security. And I'm at a topic. Have anything to add on, Tom?
No, the only thing I can't emphasize enough that, not only do you have to have a procedure on what to do in these situations, but make sure that you're reviewing it. What are the policies and procedures as far as what if you have an armed customer that's in in your licensed premise that decides to take action? What do you do then? These are all things that need to be discussed and reviewed before an incident like this happens.
What do you do if you have
Katie?
somebody who has an open, can carry, and it's
okay? So that's going to be a jurisdictional thing. Some states can say, hey, you can't carry a firearm in these particular types of establishments. Some will say bar, some will say cannabis, some will say different areas. So I'm not going to give you an answer that covers it all. But a licensed concealed carry person can usually carry unless it's designated illegal to carry in that location. So for example, Colorado, a person that's got a concealed weapons license in Colorado can carry into a dispensary legally. So the question is, if a robbery does take place and that concealed license holder takes action, what do you do as a licensee or as an employee? That kind of changes the game a little bit. One thing is you can't ask the patron to not carry, or not to take action here or there. They're going to take that action. That's going to be on them. not so much as the licensee, but what happens if a licensee, a patient, you know this patient, he's come in, every other day for 2 years, and you know that they're a good person and a patient, and they're a caregiver, bringing their medicine to the patient, and they happen to produce their concealed weapons permit and hold somebody at gunpoint. I think that's the way that process should happen. Definitely needs to be discussed before it happens. But the way I would say is that, whoever is the employee needs to contact law enforcement. Make sure you give good descriptions of the person that is the good guy, that is, with the concealed weapons permit, and say, this is the person that's got this gun, holding the bad guy at point. This is what they're wearing. Make sure that they have. Yeah, right. Because what you don't want to have happen is a law enforcement officer respond, and the good Samaritan who thwarted the robbery with their concealed weapon is now being presumed the bad guy, and they get shot by a law enforcement officer. And that kind of just happened not too long ago. It wasn't a dispensary, but a armed citizen actually took response against an active shooter, and law enforcement actually shot which is very, very sad. Yeah. So how do we convey to law enforcement that there's a good guy on the premises with a firearm? And that's 911 and saying, this is exactly what's going on. This is the description of the good guy with a firearm, and then of course the good guy's got to listen to commands when law enforcement gets there. Very, very, we can't train for this, but starting to speak about these things is, if you're a good guy with a firearm and the police come, you call 911, they're coming, and you hear some noise, you don't turn with your firearm and say, what's that noise over this way? And point your firearm at a law enforcement officer. So you got to know that, okay, they're coming, put the firearm down on the ground, or listen to the commands that the officers are giving. So these are things that have to be planned for way before it happens.
Yep.
So they're,
I don't think I've ever identified that in my scenarios and SOPs for robbery with an armed, customer who's maybe going to take action. So that's something I need to step up on my game with and make sure I never really, you don't think about things until some stuff you don't know until you know.
Well, and there's more and more states that are actually going to a permitless carry system. So they don't need a permit to even carry concealed weapons. It's kind of a state law that they're allowed to. So you may see it more and more where a customer inside a dispensary is armed, and you won't know if it's concealed. And the only way you find out is, something's going on and they take action. But what do you do? Right then and there is not the time to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, thank you so much, Tom, for having these conversations with you. Your perspective, your knowledge, and you sharing it with all of us. And
thanks
you, everyone,
Katie,
for joining us tonight. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
My name is Eli Goodman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Best Days. We're here in New Mexico. We have many buildings that are under lease and in development, and many that are actually currently operational. So from a production perspective, we have a warehouse grow facility, we have outdoor farms, we have a processing center in which those outdoor farms need to go. We have manufacturing site, in which case we make all of our secondary products, all of our edibles, we got to package everything. And then from a retail perspective, we have 3 open retail stores, and we're about to expand 5 more as we head into adult use, which we're very excited about. Build My SOP has been extremely helpful for us and makes everything much smoother. Cannabis is a very interesting world to operate in because its regulatory changes are ongoing. We go from a regulator to a new regulator and a new set of rules. Going from medical, going into adult use, things keep changing and developing. And there's a lot of information to pass on to all of our staff, which are working in different sites with different needs and different specific operating procedures. Build My SOP gives us this very easy platform that is accessible to those employees, both to go back and see an SOP, to look at it, to make sure they're following protocol as originally asked. We can use it in training, and they also are signing off. So they have stated that we have asked them to do it in a certain way, and they're able to do it, and that makes it a lot easier for me at the end of the day, just to know that we are doing everything we can do to stay as forward with compliance as we can possibly imagine.